Well, thank you so much. So now let's open it up to, not that it's not already happening.
Except for Mr. Brown.
Let's start from the back. Ladies first.
Fine. Careful.
Thanks so much for the sharing. I appreciate very much you guys sharing of various merits of some, I would say, carrot approaches, including trust building, positive engagement, which I really appreciate very much. But I'm also sad, to be honest, especially having read what Carine's research. There are clearly quite strong evidences about the lack of accountability, lack of enforcement, and also violations of standard operating procedures or even contract terms, right? Also, I would say, and I believe also, kindness, trust, actually also go hand in hand with justice. So in your experiences and also in Carine's research, for example, do you still see any unutilized space to tackle this in a harsher way? Why I say in a harsher way? Because as taxpayers in Hong Kong, I'm one of them, I think most of us are as well. I think we have all the right and responsibility to get all the government officials concerning parties to really live up to standard, live up to what taxpayers and also citizens' expectations. So, are there any unutilized space that we should make use of? For example, Ombudsman's office, various kinds of public grievances channels. So, how do you see? Is it useless, or is it really some unused space that we should make use of? Especially, I believe that citizens should be a very strong and more united forces on this level.
I think that the unused space is about understanding where it goes wrong and then try to intervene in that process. And that learning of where it has gone wrong and what you can adjust, that's a process. And trust is needed to make sure that people can experiment. And then when they experiment, that things can go wrong, that you have to adjust. And then you've got to have some flexibility that there is money to resolve his damaged furniture and the relationship with the skateboarders at night. And so you need flexibility. And for flexibility, you need trust. If you go back down the rules and start suing or go to court, that's exactly where everything goes wrong. Because that's why people then stick to the line of the contract and the responsibility of a party, and everybody gets stuck, and then nothing can be done. It's just black and white. And what we're talking about for enjoyment of the public space is the grey area, and how to manage the grey area and allow the grey area to blossom and become more colourful and do all kind of weird stuff. And for that, you just need trust among people that there is experimentation. That we let things be and that you let things happen and that you're happy that things are not going to be straightforward and so on. And that just takes everybody helping each other to make sure that that space is there to do that.
I think we don't actually have too many problems. They're not really real problem sites that can be identified. I do think that one thing that would help, I'm really disappointed at the commercial floor space at the ground level in the Hong Kong area, with Kerry Hotel and that general area there, where the ground floor spaces to me don't relate to the waterfront at all. And I think one of the things that we should ban is a marketing section in every big developer, because even when we're talking about what should go along at the back of the Avenue of the Stars, they had identified all these high brand shops to go there, and they've gone there. And when I said you should be putting F&B on there, they said, oh, some of these high brand shops have F&B inside, right? So that was their compromise. So that's a problem, you know, that the people, we design it and we look at the relationship to the water, but then the marketing people don't see that same relationship. So I think that's one problem. The other thing is spaces that haven't been done. Carine showed you on her plan the connection from the West Kowloon district up to Olympic at the back of the typhoon shelter. It's a big gap. And part of the Harbour Business Forum, we did a study on it, creating a pedestrian connection from there to there. And one of the really interesting questions that was asked by us, asked of us by someone from Transport Department was, why do you want a footpath there? They couldn't even see that there was this missing link in the whole of the waterfront system. And so we made proposals to government, we don't know where they're going. But that to me is a really big opportunity. And the public should be saying, we want to walk from here to there. You cannot get from the Olympic area on foot down to West Kowloon.
I think, like as I said in my presentation, I think it's a matter of the government really being able to clarify its thinking on how to structure these agreements, because there hasn't been a whole lot of thought given to that in the past. And there's a sort of reliance on sort of outdated historical mechanisms that really don't serve the purpose of delivering high quality public space. Like the land lease mechanism, it's just super clunky. You can't really do a whole lot with it. And so you need to be able to figure out like these newer, better, sort of more specific, more flexible mechanisms with like real accountability, like real like performance targets. Like you go and involve the public, maybe you have to do user satisfaction surveys. You might be able to involve the public in like, you know, even more ways, like with volunteers helping to, you know, take care of the space or, you know, do like events and type of things, programming, like basically involve the community as well. So these, like, there's a lot of people in both the nonprofit and the private sector who are willing to do these things, but the structure doesn't exist. Like, the government basically needs to figure this stuff out.
Oh yeah, just one fact about accountability. I just want to talk about how we usually submit for design of those unused space. Usually, architect like me work for free for like 3 months, come up with the design, and then you do everything in it, and then the government say that now you're accountable for everything you promised to do, on the basis that everything I do for free is now accountable. So when we operate, we realize things doesn't work, but then everyone is like, you're accountable for what you promised to do. But well, no, I didn't get paid to do a full-blown analysis, right? So you know, the whole process at the moment is a bit tricky. That we are promised, we promised the government to do certain things, but on the basis that all these NGO are actually working for free. Yeah, it's really not taxpayer money. It's really NGOs, like if they're lucky, to give us like some compensation for some of the expenses we have, but most of the time it's NGO money or my money in some way. Yeah.
You're giving your life.
Okay, so next question.
Thank you. I think you're leading in a very, very good point that I want to address. I started my career in the commercial world and slowly learning from the NGO world. And I realized that if you don't have an incentive program and management program of individual staff, departments, or department heads, you won't get anywhere. Many years ago, the Auditors General actually put out reports on these vacant apartments or car park nobody used. That list came up, go into audit report, the government fixed it. Now, I was just thinking that there are many things that the value for money. Hong Kong Park restaurants is one of the most visible waste of money. We can do long-term projects. But this visibility, one project, 1 point, sharp, get it done. And all these, you have all these people selling things in Hong Kong Park, not made by, a lot of it's not made by Hong Kong local artists. They are hungry for things to display. They have a lot of talents in Hong Kong. I don't know how they get there. Right. So I thought, focus on one sharp things, get the audience general, publish the report. Your report is powerful. You're meeting a lot of reporters. How do we measure them? And then your public and private. Salute to you 3 years of really devotions on your time and being accountable. That won't last. Unless it's commercially viable. I mean, your passion's going to die. I think that... I don't know how in your performance, I've 8 years already, and I've seen some really good NGO people, they get burned out just like other commercial field. If people not supporting you, they're burned out. I think then that if you can have a report on how is the measurement of NGO, why does the administrative cost have to be 10% or less? Why does you have to have this salary base linked to government staff, which are almost guaranteed for lifetime? Why? Now, all these things actually are core of the NGO's issues. And maybe in commercial work, I always go back to the dollar signs. If they pay in compensation and the reward goes to it, they will do it. And comes up to the number, auditors, general auditing of government taxpayers' utilization has to be on board. So I'll shut up from there.
That's a good point.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
I don't know, the seating charge.
I think we have time for... Okay, let's have one more question.
Briefly, al fresco dining, why is it so hard? What can be done?
Why is it so hard?
The licensing is a nightmare, is what I'm aware of.
And what can be done?
It can be done.
It can be done, right? It's just like that NGO situation, right? People burn out before they get there because it's so complicated. You have to have a planning permission if it's inside your own site. You have the planning permission, then you have to go through the licensing. And, you could do it on a cruise terminal. And that's relatively easy. But once you get out the site, you then have to go through district council, you have to go through the lands department. And so if you look at all the bureaucratic steps, they're really, really difficult and long, and there's not necessarily a straight line from one to the other. And I think that's the problem. But I think one of the things that's really interesting now in Hong Kong is, particularly in this COVID period, people want to eat outside more often than ever before. And I don't know if there's a change in attitude. There should be.
Well, I've actually leased this stuff, And for example, Dragon Eye, when they had that terror session, no, that is government land, okay? That is completely illegal. And Sino, we were the landlords. That is completely illegal, because that is government land. And the little park at the end of it is government land, and actually those benches are illegal. So it's all down to protection of lease income and not giving away revenue, because the government relies on it, full stop.
So the way probably, because that was Jeff's question, how can you cope with this? How can we resolve this? Is that there is these discussions in communities where then there is an agreement on how much area where should be designated for outdoor seating, and then once that is agreed, then how you can apply for it, how it can be permitted. So this is done in places in cold cities in Canada and in Northern America, because the government is so eager that people fill up the street because the streets are barren and it's cold and they want to get people outside. So they're really promoting outdoor seating. In places in Europe, there is designated areas in Australia on the waterfront. They've done guidelines. You can have little booklets that show exactly how much space outside the property can be used for outdoor seating, for what distance, how you have to mark it, what's the minimum standard of seating provided. So there are these guidelines and they've been approved, and then it becomes easy to implement them. So I think Hong Kong will have to do the same, where you just have an outdoor seating recommendation or areas and go beyond the condoning we did with the flower market, go one step further, really identify and allow a process for identifying those areas through the district councils, put them on maps, and then have fulfillment Well, how the procedures got to be identified.
Not one of those government owns the land in Hong Kong.
No, it's all
the only
different.
city in the world which the
It's all
government
different
owns
places.
all the land apart from the cathedral. You've got $140 billion a year of land revenue, and that is it. And that's why you don't pay the taxes and VAT. I will shut up. I will ask, why is West Kowloon a disaster then, waterfront?
Oh, he was going to say something first before.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
And then we do West Kowloon.
Well, again, I'm going to answer the restaurant question as an architect point of view. Every restaurant, every restaurant that we build right now require licenses. Talk about kind of accountability. The licenses in the agreement always require a toilet in the restaurant within the boundary. So, for instance, at K Farm, we spend so much money just to build a toilet. The location is like here, toilet for the restaurant, and the public toilet is there, 2 meters away from it. But I was required by the license to have a toilet adjacent to my restaurant. So if I look at the whole map, it didn't really make sense. The sewage, the water supply, and everything, just to provide that toilet for the restaurant. So in some way, that whole licensing process makes it really crazy for us to build any restaurant anywhere.
Which project?
Okay, we promise to go
So
to.
just
Yes.
simple answer. The West Kowloon waterfront's really good, right?
Well, I don't think so. I've walked around it often enough.
I tell you one thing that's really good about it, it doesn't have a barrier most of the area. And and it broke the rules by doing that. You know, how did they break it? Because on the other side of where the barrier should be, there's actually rocks, so that if someone falls off the barrier, they actually fall on the rocks and they don't fall in the
But
water.
I can't see why anybody would, really, in the summer, want to spend any time there. There are hardly any benches, there's no cover or anything.
It's not finished.
For a world-class site, if I go to Macquarie Park in Sydney or whatever,
Old trees, big old trees.
or Stanley
regarding
Park in
the,
Vancouver, it's a disaster.
The restaurant issue, I think, is that the current process is not built to facilitate this use. It's basically going through all the government departments to see if anybody objects to it. So it's an objection-based system, not a facilitative system. So like you go through like 11 different government departments and ask them each one, you have a problem with this, you have a problem with that problem, somebody's gonna have a problem with it. Like even if it's the district council, like you have a problem with this, the residents upstairs say they have a problem with it, it just ends. Nobody's figured out, okay, what is the right thing to do? If you do the right thing, then you get approval. No one knows that. It's just who has a problem with it.
Just to fry up the room a little bit, back to the question of Fat Jackson, what can be done? By the way, my passion is design too, but not just on this issue, but I think overall in many other issues in the society, working in the housing and promoting a lot of the climate change issues. But I think we're not committed, or we are not believing in putting into baby step in our actions. We are complaining too much. I think we are betting on one guy in solving all the problems. In the past, maybe government, right now, maybe someone else from the non-profit sector, maybe. So I think, as I would like to what I said earlier, it's, can we build a collective impact together? We get some foundations to fund us to prototype some of the things. But later on, we get a purpose-driven company to take up some of the commercial roles to find a business model. But at the same time, we get engaged a bunch of social purpose organizations to build up the community vibrancy, to show to the public. I think right now, the only thing that we manage all the fear is to really build up a hopeful project. I think that's it, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, so we really are running out of time, so one last comment and then we need to wrap.
Hi. I'd just like to, I'm not going to complain today, I'd just like to respond to some of the things that Carine was talking about at the end of your presentation on policy, and also the general discussion about how, there was a question in the middle about how the private sector could get more involved. So that one's easy. I think really The problem is because right now public and private there's a hard line, and it's been like that for 100 years. Okay, it's not going to change. We're all going to be dead before that line disappears. So I think the solution is really, listening to the conversation, is to have more public content in private. And already, Ian has already mentioned, Vancouver, Sydney, even Shenzhen's doing it, right? Shenzhen's doing it for all their projects now. To literally have a percentage. Vancouver's 25%, Seoul I think is about 30%. Every city have these kind of mechanisms to have more public in private development, and the other way around, to have more private in public space and in public development as well, and to actually mandate that. If that's mandated, if that can be quantified, if that can be modeled, then we have a way out. Otherwise, this hard line between public and private will be sitting here till the cows come home. All right? That's my first kind of recommendation. I don't know who's going to push that, but I think that's possibly a way out.
The coalition.
And you only have to look at...
Our coalition.
Yes.
Right. So my second response or suggestion is to Carine's last slide about policy. I think, policy people like to make checklists. You like to do analysis, great analysis. I've flipped through your book, and then you have a kind of checklist. But the problem is the checklist, all the items are not, they're not related, right? And that's the difference between policy people and strategy people. Like if you talk to a McKinsey, or if you talk to a think tank. Think tanks come up with lists, McKinsey comes up with models. What I think is, I think all your points are great, but I think, there are 5 variables which I kind of picked up from your presentation today, which I thought was really great. One is the duration of the contract, of the lease, sorry. The other one is investments, CapEx and OpEx. We need to differentiate between those two. The third one is inclusivity or accessibility, whatever you want to call it, and then activity or vibrancy. And then the umbrella over this is management. So what I think is missing from the policy thing is a management model. You actually need to model this with metrics so that investment, duration, activity, and vibrancy can be in one model, interrelated, right? It's no longer a checklist, and that model can be farmed out to every single government tender so that people like Vicky and all the other people that do free work don't suffer anymore. There's a money element, there's a time element.
There will always be suffering.
There's an activity element, and it's quantifiable, it's measurable, it's modeled as one thing, and you get one integrated product. And then I think we're getting closer to what Ian was saying, the common vision. But we need a common model as well. We need a model that works. Without that kind of mechanism, again, we'll be sitting here going through checklists till the cows come home.
But do you agree that the piloting and coalitions are necessary
to
get there?
Honest recommendations.
Right, thank you so much for making my job much easier by concluding this launch. So we are out of time. So please give them a round of applause, and thank you so much for coming. We do have this report online. There was a QR code. I'll show it again. Please check it out. And yeah, hopefully we will see this coalition come to a fruition at some point. Consortium, I love that word too. Yes, thank you so much. So yeah, this is the end of